One of the themes I like to explore often is long-term strategic thinking versus short-term emotional impulse. In the blockchain space, this line of thought expresses itself often in terms of resilience. Why is Bitcoin so respected? Because much like Mark Twain during his lifetime, the reports of Bitcoin's death have always been greatly exaggerated. Anti-fragility, durability, and resilience have always been among the great hallmarks of blockchain technology done well. This past weekend, Cardano demonstrated that it was bred for that kind of resilience. It turns out it's pretty tough to kill something if its parts consist of thousands of globally distributed decentralized nodes and they can all self-heal. Ready? Let's go. Today, we're going to discuss a recent video from Charles on the network anomaly and Cardano's near instant self-healing, some actual spying done by a member of the Army of Spies, big things happening in Cardano streaming media, a reported IRS update on crypto staking rewards, and Book.io apparently branching out into another blockchain. If you were slightly uncomfortable with this image because he seems to be holding some thread for stitching, but he also seems to have already bandaged himself up, or if you're finding value in these videos each weekday, please consider delegating to the Army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. Charles dropped two different videos today, and I think together they make a really good point about the most important strength of Cardano versus Ethereum. And it's one that people tend to overlook. It's something they don't even think about. It's almost a hidden strength of Cardano that nobody pays attention to. At least nobody's going to pay attention to it until they have a doomsday on Ethereum. So in the first video, Charles basically goes over what happened on Sunday with this weird network event that happened in the middle of the night on Sunday night. He says it appears to have been a transient issue, probably due to a collection of different factors happening simultaneously, and it doesn't seem likely to be reproducible. The network behaved as designed and self-healed. The issue lasted something like 2 minutes, and IOG didn't really have to do anything. It wasn't something that IOG had to proactively do to cause the network to self-heal. In fact, he says the vast majority of the IOG team was sleeping when all of this was going on. His second video was where this got really interesting. So this was one of those gigantic, all-encompassing whiteboard videos. And this one was one where he basically explained the grand game of blockchain architecture. We've talked about this a little bit before in terms of the blockchain trilemma, but this whiteboard video kind of takes it to another level. So he basically explains you've got a blockchain that is sort of like an organic thing, like a human body. And just like a human body, occasionally we'll have a cancerous cell or a virus. You've got ways the body tries to prevent those things from happening. And you've also got an immune system that deals with recovery from those issues. How do you kill those cells? How do you prevent those cancerous cells or viruses or their bad cells from sort of taking over the body? You've got to have some measures of prevention and you've got to have some methods of recovery. The problem comes in where you start basically being a Gen 3 blockchain. You start introducing certain things like speed, open access, permissionlessness, Byzantine actors, and increased expressiveness. As you start introducing these things to a blockchain ecosystem, and Charles describes them as demons, as you start introducing these demons to the blockchain ecosystem, you start cutting against your prevention of issues. You start whittling down your ability to prevent issues, and you have to rely more on recovery from issues. Charles explains Vassal introduced a lot of new things. And Vassal, of course, introduced diffusion pipelining, which increased our speed quite a bit. And we also introduced certain things that increased expressiveness. But With this increase in speed with diffusion pipelining, you have this new mechanism. In the old pre-Vossel system, down here in red at the bottom of the screen, you can see in the old Vossel system, if an actor in the ecosystem introduced a bad transaction to a relay, what would happen is that relay would just get knocked out because that relay had to fully validate the transaction before sending it on. And with diffusion pipelining, it's going to go ahead and send out that transaction to other relays. So instead of just that relay getting knocked out, you've got all of the relays it's connected to getting knocked out. And when he says that in this case, it looks like we had sort of an emergent bug because multiple factors seem to happen simultaneously, which is why this particular issue doesn't seem to have like a high probability of reproducibility. In this particular instance, you had multiple factors sort of coinciding, and instead of just n number of relays getting knocked out, you had sort of n squared number of relays getting knocked out, and that's sort of propagating through the system. But the larger point that Charles is trying to make is that these are the same trade-offs. We've talked about the blockchain trilemma on this channel many times. You've got speed, decentralization, and security. And in this sense, we can think about security more as a form of stability. So as we increase speed, we're going to lose a little bit on the other legs of the trilemma. So with the introduction of Vossel, we got some cool things like diffusion pipelining, which increased speed, but we lose a little bit of prevention. The relay is no longer validating the transaction before passing it along. So you might have an incident like we suffered on Sunday. But that's where recovery comes in. The Cardano network is built to self-heal. In that case, it sounds like it's self-healed in 2 minutes. This is pretty incredible. And it's great because it means we can increase speed, and maybe occasionally we suffer an anomaly like we did on Sunday, which will, of course, go back and investigate, figure out a way to fix so it doesn't occur again. But occasionally you're going to have an increase in these kinds of, you're going to have an increase of these kinds of occasional anomalies as you increase speed. So as we introduce greater speed, we'll see these kind of things. But it's manageable because we have a good recovery mechanism. The nodes, in this case, were able to self-heal, and the delays on the network apparently only lasted like 2 minutes. This is pretty manageable. I think most people in the network participating in the ecosystem wouldn't even have known it happened if not for the reports in media. Here's why this self-healing ability, here's why the way Cardano is architected is a huge benefit. So we're not done increasing speed. Sometime in the first half of this year, according to Charles in this video, we're going to start getting the things that will result in input endorsers, where we're going to have apparently very large increases in speed. And as we increase speed, we'll still occasionally see these kinds of network events, these little things happening where nodes might have to self-heal because of bad transactions. And Charles has a long explanation of how in input endorsers, the resultant sharding of the network will enable a node that gets a bad transaction on the sort of the periphery of the network to go through the same things that happen on Sunday, self-heal, and it won't affect the main blockchain. The main blockchain will just keep ticking along because we have sort of the main blocks in the blockchain and these other blocks that come in with input endorsers. We've talked about this many times on the channel, but these blocks, these nodes on the periphery of the network, they could suffer a bad transaction in one of those blocks, and apparently it won't affect the main blockchain. It'll just sort of affect the periphery where these blocks are being introduced. But here's the big benefit in Cardano. We can do these kind of things in Cardano. We can keep increasing speed, and even if these kinds of anomalous events occur, we'll just self-heal and move along. In Ethereum, it's a little bit different circumstance. In Ethereum, the way they deal with introducing these demons, these things in purple here, the way they deal with these things is by having a bonded slashing network. They have economic penalties if any bad unwanted network behavior occurs. So in Ethereum, as you start introducing these demons, as you start introducing speed, which I think everybody understands is a goal of Ethereum, to introduce more speed, more scaling. It's a big part of Ethereum. Introducing sharding has been something that's been talked about in Ethereum for a long time. As you start doing these things, if you suffer an anomaly on the Ethereum network that results in validators engaging in unwanted behavior, you could have slashing. You could wake up one morning after an anomalous event overnight, just like we suffered on Sunday, and what if 20% of the network got slashed? What if 20% of the Ethereum gets slashed in one single anomalous event in Ethereum? This is a point Charles makes. If he was a part of Ethereum still, this would be his nightmare, that he wakes up one morning and 20% of the Ethereum out there just got slashed. This is reminiscent of that video we discussed on this channel quite some time ago, where an Ethereum core developer admitted in an interview that he wasn't staking his own Ethereum because he knew too much about how the sausage was made. It's not just us in Cardano who are aware of the risks of slashing. Even the Ethereum core developers understand that when you use economic penalties to enforce good behavior on the network, you run the risk of these kinds of bad events happening. Anybody who's staking could lose all of their stake in Ethereum. What if there's some kind of a propagating bad transaction in the Ethereum blockchain? What if it propagates across relays, across nodes, across validators? You could lose all of your stake through no fault of your own. This is something that can't happen in Cardano. In Cardano, there is no slashing. You don't lose your stake as an economic penalty. In Cardano, we can just keep evolving. We could just keep ramping it up without having to worry about this nightmare of mass slashing. Check this out, the Army of Spies in action. You'll remember in episode 522, we looked at some images of a building, and that building in the images had some branding on the outside of the building. But when you zoomed in on that branding in the image, it looked a little funny. It looked a little unusual, and there were some questions about this. So it turns out that Scott Jensen apparently lives close to this building. And it looks like he just went over there and took some photos, and here's what he found. You can see from these images that there doesn't seem to be any branding at all on the outside of this building. And again, we could have the wrong building. It could be a different point in time. We don't know exactly. He did find this banner that says Happy Travel Destinations on it. Obviously, that name is very similar to the Happy Cafe name, but apparently, according to Scott, this is what the building looks like, apparently just the other day when he took these photos. So still a lot of questions about this building, but thank you to Scott Jensen for taking those photos and posting this. Be aware, Cardano projects, the reach of the Army of Spies is wide. Here's a great post by Patrick Tobler about progress in Cardano streaming media. He says, congratulations, Newcast.io, for the release of Atman's CNFT. Newcast.io says, their profile says, Newcast is a video streaming platform on the Cardano blockchain built by creators for creators. Patrick says, Atman is an award-winning short film featured by India's largest newspaper, The Hindu, and presented at multiple film festivals. This is what adoption looks like. This is what real-world use cases look like. This sounds fantastic. If we've got streaming media in Cardano NFTs that's been featured in the largest newspaper in one of the largest nation states in the world, that's good news in my book. The following is not tax advice of any kind. I'm just reading this post by this poster here who says he's the head of tax at CoinTracker. So his post says, according to the IRS interpretation of the law, staking rewards are taxable upon receipt. On 1/20/23, the IRS updated its digital asset page to reflect this. You should also check yes for the crypto question if you receive any staking rewards. And you can see down here in the screenshots, he's got taxable gain or loss may result from transactions, including but not limited to receipt of a new digital asset as a result of mining or staking activities. And over here, for example, check yes if at any time during 2022 you receive new digital assets as a result of mining, staking, and similar activities. This hasn't been a question for me for a long time. This was already pretty clear to me, but I think for some people, I still see people saying the opposite, saying kind of what we wish was the case. What I wish was the case was that you didn't have to recognize any income on your staking rewards until you sold them. But what I've understood to be the case, my own personal understanding as a non-tax guy, my own understanding was that that was income the second I got those staking rewards. So what this poster is saying, head of tax at CoinTracker, is that is indeed the case. Is according to the IRS interpretation of the law, staking rewards are taxable upon receipt. Finally, we got this news from book.io. They say this Thursday, Alice in Wonderland mints on both Cardano and Ethereum. So it looks like book.io is branching out to Ethereum. I hope you're having a great week, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.